Our next speaker is Andrea Provaglio.
Thank you. Thank you. Ready to use this? Okay. Okay, it's for the recording.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Or you prefer with a microphone?
Yes.
Where's the mic? That microphone. Okay. Okay. So welcome everyone. Then again, my name is Andrea Provaglio. That's what I do. I work independently and I work with organizations, IT organizations that want to do business better in the 21st century. So the subject for this talk is value. Okay? Value is something that I started looking into last year, meaning that I wonder, okay, so we claim that we are supposed to deliver value to the customer. We are supposed to prioritize by value. We are supposed to do many things with value. But the question is, what is value? Okay? What do we mean by value? Okay. So one thing I'm not going to talk about during this talk is the financial definition of value. Okay. So I will not talk about KPIs, return on investment, cost of delay divided by duration. No, I will not talk about any of these indicators. I'm the kind of person who likes to scratch under the surface and see what's really beneath. So that's what I would like to explore with you today. My question is, do you have a definition of value? I mean, what is value to you? Just a question. It's very, very simple. Anybody wants to... What is value? How would you define value in IT? Yes?
That's something that gives meaning to the whole thing.
Something that is meaningful.
Yes, if it's got value, I will continue. If it doesn't, I will stop. It's just
Okay.
how the client will feel about it.
Okay, how the client feels about it, and if we like it, we go on, otherwise we don't. Okay? On the back.
Yeah, something which helps to bring money to the business.
Okay, something that helps to make the business profitable.
Yeah.
Okay?
Something what can make a difference, to make some product what can make a difference.
Okay, something that can make a difference, that can make your product unique, for instance.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Something
Maria.
that resolves problems.
Something that solves problems. Okay? Yes.
Something worth spending money on.
Something worth spending money on. Okay, something worth investing time and money and resources and so on. Okay, good. Anything else? Just maybe one more and then maybe not. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing. And as you can see, there are different perspectives of value. Even inside this room, there are different perspectives. So, or let's say that you can look at value from different perspectives. Okay. So when I started this investigation on value, I also asked myself, okay, what's the concept of value in different authors? Okay. I'm an agile guy. Okay, so I work with agile development teams and agile mindsets. So all of these guys here, they have their own opinion about what value is. But let's start from the very basics. Let's start with the Agile Manifesto. Okay, 15 years ago. Okay, 15 years ago, they said that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Problem is, they don't give a definition of valuable. Okay. It must be valuable, but we don't know what valuable means. Good. Then I look at Scrum. I look at the Scrum Guide. Okay. And the Scrum Guide is even more interesting because they mention value 17 times and they give no definition. Okay. Even more interesting. I'm not saying that this is wrong. I mean, there could be wisdom in not defining value. Okay, there could be wisdom in not defining value. I'm just saying that it's an interesting concept to explore. Okay. By the way, I noticed that you guys are taking pictures. Please take all the pictures you want. These slides are already on SlideShare. Just look for my name on SlideShare and you will find slides. And also take all the pictures you want. So, training materials. I looked at certification materials. In this specific certification material, they define value for the profit organization. For the profit organization, value is money, is represented in money terms, which is something also came up in this room. Okay? So that's the definition of value. If it makes money, then it's valuable. And then we have other point of view, like Tom Gill, like Ron Jeffries, and he's one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. And Ron says, value is what you want. Okay? If you want something, it's because it has value for you. Okay? This gentleman, Tom Gill, you probably know about Tom, is also known as the grandfather of Agile, because he used to do 1 week long iterations in development, so 1 week long sprints in the late 80s. Okay? So over 25 years ago. Okay? Even before we thought there could be the Agile Manifesto, he was doing 1 week long sprints. Okay. Now, Tom he's very precise. He has a very engineering mindset, or a very engineering attitude, I should say. And for Tom, value is the perceived benefit. So it must be beneficial, and it's a perceived benefit. It's not an absolute benefit. It's relative, it's subjective, it's perceived. Whereas the benefit we think we get from doing something. Okay. Then we have these guys, Gorko and David Evans, and they go like of metaphysical. Okay. So the value of software is a vague and esoteric concept in the domain of the business users. Okay. So it's vague and esoteric. Okay. But it's there. Just don't know what it is. So this is, you see, different definitions of value, from money to whatever you want, to something vague, esoteric, something that is undefined. So that's the concept, that's the idea. And then of course we have values. Value is different from values, because values are something that we use as reference points in our life. And value is a measurement of something. Okay? So of something. But values could be learning, could be a value, helping the customer could be a value, joy, revenue could be a value, creativity is a value. So they're all valuable, okay? But they're values, something, let's say, reference points. So, at the end of the day, after thinking, I came up with this definition of value. Well, that was the question I asked myself. So, when it comes to delivering something, you deliver what, to whom, and why? That's a good question to ask. Deliver what, to whom, and why? Why is very important. Let me explain why it's very important. Oh, one thing I want to just remove from this discussion in a couple of slides is, let's talk about money, just for a second, okay? Then we talk about something else, okay? Let's talk about money for a second. The best thing I can tell you about money, that it's important. Duh. Obviously, okay, money is important, obviously. The interesting thing about money is that it's also a trading indicator, meaning that it could be very interesting to know that in the last month your company has made $2 million. It could also be more interesting to know that you lost $2 billion in the last month. But whatever, or however you put it, you get that information too late. Even if it is good news or bad news, you get that information too late. Okay? So that's why we call it a trailing indicator. Leading indicators are more interesting. Indicators that can give you an idea if you're going in the right direction or wrong direction before you find out actually it was the wrong direction. Okay? The other thing I want to mention about value, about money, is that money is just necessary. Okay? We have been discussing this during the workshop this morning, my leadership workshop. So money, profitability. Profitability is just a necessary condition for every company to survive. No company can survive without money, except in a few cases, like large banks, too big to fail. Okay, but and other things. But anyway, profitability is a necessary condition, but that's not the reasons for existence. At least for some companies, it is not. The reasons for existence is generate value somehow. Value for the community, value for the employees, value for the stakeholders, and also make money. because we need that. So, but money is not the main point. So it's not an end in itself. Money is not an end in itself. It's just something that is necessary. Okay? Or we can put it another way, the reason why we put so much emphasis on making money these days is, as Ricardo Semler said in a very nice TED talk, most executives today, they are running their own companies on a 30 or 90 days mandate. Meaning that as a CEO, if you are not good quarter after quarter after quarter, if you are not good, get out of here. Okay? So there is no long-term vision. There is in many cases, there is no long-term vision. It's just immediate profit that is important. And that's why we tend to think that the reason for companies to exist is making money. But that's only the reason for the CEO to stay there. That's a different story. Okay? Good. Enough about money. Now let's talk about quantification of something. Tom Gill, as I mentioned, he's very much into quantifying things. He claims that you can quantify everything. And by quantifying, he means attach a number to something. Okay? Attaching some kind of, could even not be a number, but attaching some kind of information to something. So quantification is fundamental. I have to admit, when I started looking at Tom's work, I was kind of skeptical because it seemed to me a bit dry, but then I realized something. So he says that, okay, you can measure everything, right? So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to create a scale. So for instance, if you want to measure how popular your website is, you are probably going to measure individual visits to your website, or page loads, or whatever, okay? So that would be your scale. And then you could have some past value, current value, something that is tolerable, a wonderful goal that you would like to reach, and so on and so on and so on. But the real reason for quantification is to have intelligent conversations. And that's what he says. The main purpose of quantification of performance is to force us to think deeply and debate with other people. And I've seen in a lot of cases, companies where they go into endless meetings saying, we should do this for why? Okay, we should do this thing, or this other thing, or that other thing. Okay, so why do we want to do that? Because we need to do that. Okay? And then you realize afterwards that these two people, or 3-4 people, they were talking about different things. But when you start having the need to attach a number, then you need to analyze very carefully what you're talking about. You need to come to some shared agreement that, for instance, I don't know, visibility, it could mean individual visits to your website, but it could also mean how many times your website is referenced on social media. That's another kind of indicator. Okay? So do we want to be popular on social media, or do we want people to come to our website? Okay. If you don't come to this level of understanding, very clear understanding of your definition of value in terms of visibility, you could end up into endless discussions, right? Okay. So one thing that Tom is saying is, okay, you should quantify for the sake of having intelligent and clear discussions. The other thing is the necessity to identify clearly the actors in your value ecosystem. Now, I'm talking about stakeholders, okay? But I'm not using the word stakeholders. I like the word actors, because that connects more to something that, what was it? It comes to my mind. So one of the authors, one of the signatures, Alistair Coburn. He's talking about actors when he talks about stakeholders, because he uses a metaphor. Like in the theater, some actors can be on stage and other actors are behind the stage. And you don't see them. But at some point they pop out and say, oh no, I have a different idea. Okay? So stakeholders that you don't see, but they are important, and at some point they will show up. Usually when you have taken all the important decisions, they show up and say, oh no, we should do something different. Okay? So I use the term actors. And I use this definition for actor or stakeholder. Because even in this case, I did some research, there are about 25 different definitions of stakeholder. Okay? About 25 different definitions of stakeholder. Okay? I decided to settle for this one. A stakeholder is anyone who is influenced or can influence the outcome of an initiative. Let me say that again. Is anyone who can influence or is influenced by the outcome of an initiative. Generally, when we think of stakeholders, we think of people putting the money on the table. Okay? Certainly they are stakeholders. But everyone involved in that initiative is a stakeholder. Let's say that somebody decides to build a highway through Lviv. Okay? So the stakeholders are not just the people putting out the money. The stakeholders are all the citizens in this city. They are all stakeholders because they are very deeply affected by that decision. Okay? So an exercise that I do sometimes when I'm with clients, I start project starting, I try to identify stakeholders. Now I understand that the font here is very small. Don't worry, it's not a vision test. Okay? It's but it could be. So Maria, what can you read here?
Nothing.
Okay, so
Client legal HQ.
I'm sorry.
Client legal HQ support.
Yeah, good.
Product manager.
See,
Product
it's a
manager.
vision test. Okay, we can renew your driving license. Okay.
I don't have one.
When you have one. Okay, so yeah, headquarter, accounting, resellers, legal department, clients, support team, IT department, product manager, project manager, suppliers. All of these are stakeholders. All of these are actors in our system, in our ecosystem. And one thing that I like to do usually is something like that. Have you ever seen this kind of mapping?
Sure.
Yeah, very, very popular, right? So you have interest and power. Okay? So some of these stakeholders have a high interest in the project, and other stakeholders said they have a lot of power over the project. Okay? So in this case, up here we have the product manager and the project manager. They have a very high interest, and also they have power. But they don't have, for instance, as much power as the headquarter. The headquarter could just cancel the project. They could just pull the plug. Okay? The project manager cannot. On the other hand, the headquarter may not be so interested in this project because they have 10,000 other projects running. And this is just one. Okay? Now the thing is, when you start mapping this thing out, you realize that some of these stakeholders you want to inform, others you want to engage, others you want to keep happy, others you want to monitor. Because they play different parts in our scene. But the other thing that you may realize, oh, that's a question. The other thing that you want to realize is that the relationships between stakeholders are very interesting because they represent a complex system. So it's not just that this guy has more interest than this guy. Okay? There's also, and we'll go to that later, the fact that they can influence each other in certain ways. Now, the thing is, one of the reasons why it's so complex to identify, to define value, is because each stakeholder have different perspectives of value. So you have a bunch of people working on the project, each with different level of interest and so on, and they all have different perspectives on what is valuable. There is an example here. Here you have an hypothetical customer operations manager. Okay? And for this guy, what is important is to provide good customer service. It's important that customers recommend our services to friends. To lower the operational cost is important, shorten the cycle time is important, and this is just one stakeholder. So just one stakeholder has different values. And then you have multiple stakeholders with values that can conflict with each other, or sometimes not. So it's very complicated. For each goal, each stakeholder could implement different strategies to reach the goal. So to reach that goal, we could do this thing, or we could do another thing. And another stakeholder could say, but I want to do something different. And that conflicts with what you want to do. So it's very complicated. That's one of the reasons why usually we like to appoint one project manager and have the guy making all decisions and holding this accountable for everything. Okay? Because otherwise it's very complicated. It's not the best solution. It's not the best solution, but it's very common. So let's move on. This part, I understand that this part is a little boring, but I need this part to explain something different later. Another approach that I've seen is to connect goals and strategies on different levels. So let's say that these are business value means that these are the owners of the company, or maybe the shareholders, the financial part. Okay? For these guys, profit and market share are the most important goals. Value is profit and market share. Okay, for these guys. And one different strategies could be we can reduce the training cost to increase profit, or then we increase user productivity to increase the profit. Okay, and so on and so on and so on. Now, these strategies could become goals to a lower level in the organization if you have a hierarchical organization. So these strategies, this could be a project manager. Okay? And the project manager could receive these two strategies as goals. You need to lower the training costs, and you need to increase user productivity. Okay? And then the strategies for this guy could be, okay, I want to make the product more intuitive, and I want to improve the performance. And for the product team, these strategies become goals. Okay? It's hierarchical. It's not systemic, it's hierarchical, but it's one way of trying to create a form of alignment, some kind of coordination between different values and strategies and different stakeholders. But the thing is that what we are really talking about, oh, by the way, I forgot about this. The other problem is that if you start to measure all this stuff, the risk is that you will destroy intrinsic motivation. And again, we were talking about this during the workshop this morning. As soon as you start giving external evaluations and external goals, people lose intrinsic motivation. They find no pleasure in what they're doing because all they ask to do is to meet a certain number, okay, which could be very dry. Anyway, that's one. What I wanted to say is that things are more organic. You remember this, and then you can start creating connection between these guys. Let me explain. What we're saying here is that even though this stakeholder here, or this actor, apparently is not very influential, right? Because it has a low interest and it has very low power. However, clients can directly affect support. If these guys start to complain a lot, they will complain to support, okay? Which is more important as a stakeholder. And support could start complaining with the IT department because your product has a lot of bugs, and then our clients are unhappy, so these things escalate, right? And so on and so on and so on. So even an apparently harmless stakeholder can have a huge impact on this system, because what we're talking about here is a complex adaptive system. It's a place where everything is interconnected. Okay? And so trying to make sense of all this, it's what I started looking into. There are different approaches. One is this. Remember, we mentioned that different stakeholders have different goals. Remember? Stakeholder goals, stakeholder goals. Even at the goal level, these can be systemic. Like in this case, you could have a goal here, which has an influence on another goal here, which after some time has an influence on a goal here and so on. Let me give an example. This guy, this could be the project manager. And one of the goals of the project manager is to reduce the time to market. Okay? So to reduce the time to market, the strategy is we will stop writing tests. Never happened, right? Okay. So we will stop writing tests because we need to deliver next week. Okay? So just crank it up and throw out something. Okay? And so you do, and after some time, bugs start coming into the organization, and support starts receiving a lot of bugs. Okay? And maybe it is affecting one of their goals. Their goal would have been to have a zero defect product, but they are not. Okay? And so they start complaining, and that is an impact. Now you need to recover, and so this is an impact on this goal, and so on and so on and so on. So it's complicated. Well, actually, it's complex. That's what I want to say. It's complex. One way for trying to make sense about in all this complexity is time flies. Is to are you familiar with the concept of impact maps, impact mapping? If you are not, I recommend that you take a look at impact mapping because it can be it's very simple and very useful. Okay, so impact mapping by Gojko Adzic. An impact map is more or less like a mind map. Okay, so you have something, and then you have another level, and then you have another level, and then you have another level. The levels are why we want to do something. Who can, so this is our goal. The why is the goal, okay? Is the reason why we do something. And the who are people or entities that can help us reach the goal, one way or another. Stakeholders. Goal, stakeholders, okay? And then for each stakeholder, you could have different ways, different strategies, okay? With which this specific stakeholder can help you reach the goal. And then for each strategy, you have actions, something concrete that you can do. Okay? In this example, you have someone who wants to increase visits to the Agile coach by 100% within a certain time frame. Okay? This is what is going to measure. Unique visits, Google Analytics is the data input, current visits, desired maximum, and so on. Who can help me to increase the visits? The readers and the author. Okay? This is a blog. This is a blog site. So readers and the author can help reach the goal. What the author can do is to increase reputation. If I'm very famous, people will come to my blog. Okay? And things that I can do to increase reputation are provide quality and quantity of articles or seek referrals. These are concrete things that we can do, seek referrals. And the same thing for the readers. Now the thing that is good about impact mapping is that it correlates what you do with why you do it, which is something that we frequently lose. You're asked to do something and you have no idea why. Okay? So that's one way of using impact maps. But now let's start talking about values for a second. So if you correlate what you do with why you do it, a good question for you is, which are the values behind my why? Okay? I want to reach that goal. Which are the values that are driving me? Because then again, values are reference points, they are hierarchical. So a value could be happiness of my employees, or solving somebody's problems with our product, or give a contribution to the society, or reduce the carbon emissions because our product will reduce carbon emissions. So there are different values, right? So it's important, from my point of view, to start talking about values with the different stakeholders, because they will have different perspectives. And as long as you keep talking only about what you do and how you do it, and not about why you really want to do it, very likely you will run into conflicts or misunderstandings at the very least. Okay? So one thing that I did in my research, I started interviewing people. I interviewed clients, I interviewed friends, friends who are in my same line of business. And these are some examples of values. A business owner, for instance, told me that for him, measurability is more important than predictability. Being able to measure stuff is more important than being able to plan for the next 6 months. Okay? Or having impact is more important than doing something. Okay? Root cause problem solving is important. And then I need to go fast because really time flies. These are a delivery company. These are guys that deliver software for somebody else. And they told me that making the world a better place is important for them. Or helping people to make their lives in such a way, blah, 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 blah. You can read that, I need to read it for me. An IT manager told me that sustainability, which means technical sustainability and financial sustainability of the project, is a value for him. And also compliance, because in his line of business, following the regulations is very important. So compliance to the regulation is a value. Product owners, they like to see things happen. They like to make things happen, to see products come to life. Okay? That's a value. Learning or constructive negotiation. So you see, these are the reasons why people do what they do. It's not what they do, it's why they do it, what they value. So, I'm going to skip this one. I mentioned Merck this morning, but the thing is that when you start looking at different values, you have a better reference point. I can highly recommend this book, Value-Focused Thinking. The idea behind value-focused thinking is that as soon as you start thinking about what to do rather than why to do it, you immediately narrow your options. Okay? Because your mind gets attached. Let me give you an example. If I tell my wife, okay, so where should we fly for a vacation next month? Just the fact that I imply that we should fly, okay, this is narrowing my options. And we have very nice mountains, a 2-hour drive from where I live. Okay, we could just drive for a couple of hours and be in a very nice place. Why would I want to fly? But if I say, okay, where should we fly for a vacation? Okay, I'm completely ruling out that option. If I ask, why do we want to go in a couple of months? And that will be because we want to explore new places, or because we want to take a rest, or because we want to meet new, we want to see different cultures, whatever. We need to start from the whys, and then from the whys, you have a whole variety of options. But if you start from the first thing that comes in your mind, you're narrowing your options. If you start from the what, you're narrowing your options. And the next thing is that it's not about finding compromises when you try to put together different things. So I like this sentence by Scott Fitzgerald. He says that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to keep two separate concepts in mind at the same time and still being able to function. Okay? That's a good definition of intelligent people. Like, for instance, in a company, we have a long-term vision and we also look for short-term profitability. Or we are a very highly technical company, but we create artistically beautiful products. Okay? It's not one or the other, it's one and the other. It's one and the other that makes you successful. Being able to have two separate or multiple separate goals in mind at the same time and still being able to function. I'm going to skip this slide, but no, actually I have time to cover it very, very briefly. So what I'm saying is that there is one level, which is the level of values, why you do things. Okay? And each stakeholder has their own values. Okay? Then you have criteria for deciding if one value is more important than another or if they can go together. Okay? And then you have goals, things that you want to do, and then you have things that you do, actions, something that you put into practice. Now, these are different abstraction levels. And it's very useful to start talking with your stakeholders on all of these levels. If you talk at all of these levels, then you create a better alignment in a very complex system. So my definition, my metaphor for value is this picture. After thinking, exploring, asking questions, eventually my definition, my metaphor for value is this one. Are you familiar with this picture from Escher? Okay? So you have different actors living in different planes, okay? And even though they are all part of the same system, they live on different dimensions. Some of them can intersect sometimes, somehow, some of them will never, but they are all part of the same system. And this is the concept, and value is multidimensional, is systemic, is contextual, depends on the moment, is subjective, depends on the person, and it's dynamic, it changes constantly. So that's what is value. That's why it's so hard to define value, and that is why it was probably very wise for the Agile Manifesto not to give a definition of value. Just saying we want something valuable, and then find out what value means for you. Okay. Other thing I want to mention. So, oh yes, remember I was saying that we prioritize by value. Okay. Actually, speaking with a lot of product owners, virtually everyone told me that it's virtually impossible to attach a value to a single user story. It's impossible. Because a user story is just an hypothesis. It's something that we want to try to do to see if it helps us reaching certain goals. Okay? So, when you plan, for instance, if you do Scrum, and you do some planning, and you work in sprints, and you deliver stuff, okay? This is what I call the impacts loop. These are things that you do, and you see which impact they have on the world, okay? But you don't prioritize by value here, you prioritize by value on a completely different dimension, which is the dimension of the top-level values in the company, the stakeholder goals, the product goals, and this conversation needs to go on all the time if you want to have alignment. You cannot deliver anything of value if there is not alignment on this dimension. Okay? I'll tell you more about this. One thing I would like to add, how much time do we have? 5 minutes, more or less. The other thing I would like to mention is this one. If you start thinking systemically, if you start thinking that everything is correlated, one thing that you do not want to do is to focus on just one part of the system. It's what we call, as you can see, we call it local optimization of something. So you take something very complex and you focus only on a part. The reason why you don't want to sub-optimize or locally optimize a system is because it generates problems on other parts of the systems, usually. From a systemic perspective, there is no right or wrong. There is only what works and doesn't work. Okay? But what I'm trying to say is this. Let's take these kind of behaviors that we can observe in organizations sometimes. Like people having their own personal agendas. You are familiar with the term personal agendas? It means that I have my own goals in my career, which are not necessarily for the good of the company, and I want to pursue those. Okay? Or are you aware that about 50% of the features that we find in products today are virtually never used by users? About 50% of features in complex products today are not used by users. Okay? Or are you familiar with projects with an excess of bureaucracy? Extremely bureaucratic projects. Okay. Now, all of these, from a systemic perspective, they are just behaviors that fulfill different values. For each of these behaviors, there is some value behind it. Like, for instance, excessive bureaucracy. What do you think it is? Why do we have excessive bureaucracy? What is the value? If you think about it, bureaucracy has a cost. You need to maintain a lot of documents, people need to work on those documents, you need to go through a lot of meetings, you're slowing down product development, so you're losing in terms of cost of delay, so it has a cost. What is the benefit behind that cost? To save somebody's ass. Yeah, to save somebody's ass. Make sure that responsibilities are put somewhere else. Okay? And we are tacitly willing to pay for that. It's my insurance. Okay? I want to pay for my insurance. So I create a huge bureaucracy so that my ass is safe. Nobody will tell you that, but that's a hidden value in that organization. Okay? Useless product features. We want to appear busy, right? If the company is not busy, we need to lay off people, right? Or maybe we don't get enough funding for the project if we don't look busy. Okay? Yes?
So sometimes when the user decides between two products, he just take some that has more features, even if it doesn't use the 50% of that. But if you have 1,010 features, the user will buy with 1,010 because it's 10 more for free.
Yeah, could be a marketing strategy. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, personal agendas. It's very simple. So what I'm saying is that everything is systemic and everything is value-based. But since we are doing business, we need to start talking seriously about what we value and not about what we do. If you want to have a healthy company and if you want to be profitable because you deliver good products that are for the benefit of the entire ecosystem of stakeholders. So we need to really start talking about that. Now, 2 minutes left. This is one thing that could help you. And the deliberate intention of bringing about system awareness. So what I mean by system awareness is let everybody, all stakeholders, become aware of different perspectives, different goals, trying to find intelligent solutions to reach multiple goals at the same time. Okay? Bring about system awareness, which you can do using transparency, making everything visible to everyone, empathy, understanding that somebody else can have a different perspective from yours, and there could be very good reason for having a different perspective. It's just that you don't see that until you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You say, okay, now from this perspective, maybe that makes sense from this perspective. Okay? And of course, no judgmental attitude. Now, practical advice. One thing you can do, or you can try to do, even though sometimes politics will prevent it, is to bring all the stakeholders into the same room. Okay? Or at least the major stakeholders. Okay? And things can become interesting when you do so, or they will be interesting in any case. Either because people start to argue with each other, which is good, or because people just don't talk, which is a very interesting indicator that there is something else going on. Okay? But if you bring the same people into the same room and you start asking the question, okay, so why are we doing this project? Why are we doing this? Not what we're going to do. Why are we doing this? And you ask this question to different stakeholders in the same room, that could be very, very interesting. It's not easy to do, but it's something that is worth trying. Sometimes you need to do some preparation work, like, for example, speaking individually to each stakeholder, and after that, bring them into the same room. Okay? But bring them into the same room and ask why. And yes, it might become interesting. So at the end of the day, and then I'm done, and I think I'm more or less on time, what you want to do is, as a practical advice, a way to bring about system awareness is make things visual. I suggested a few approaches. You can start drawing things on the wall using this approach here, or you can create this kind of hierarchical definition of value. This is a systemic definition of value. You can use impact maps. Do whatever you want, but start making the value system visible to the stakeholders, or just brew your own style. I don't care. Be creative. But the point is, let the value system become visible to everyone. And then ask, okay, so now what? what are our options at this point. Okay? And yes, so that was the story, more or less. So in the end, yes, you have a question? 2 questions, okay. I think the gentleman on the back was, yes, hello.
So can you give an example of communication with customer or with stakeholders about those values? And what if they just answer with, like, we want to get money, and that's it?
Okay, so if you ask the question to the, well, if you ask the customer doesn't want money, right? The customer wants to pay less, probably.
Yeah, I mean the profit from the project.
Okay, so the, okay. Why 6 whys? Yes, yeah, the 5 whys could be an approach, but can you do that again? Okay, yes, that's a good suggestion. So we want to make money, why? Okay, or you could ask, okay, what do you think is the best strategy for making money? What is more important for you to make money, like, you know, like doing something illegal, or you want to do something legal?
Just make it a deposit.
Okay, but yeah, asking why could be a solution, and well, maybe we can talk later. I'll be around. Okay, so yeah, we can talk later. You have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that would have a proper answer right now, but I've took from actually Tom Gill the strategy of defining stakeholders, like separated them between critical and non-critical. Like critical are those who can kill your project actually.
Yeah.
So we're thinking how I can, because I use this tool for some time, and I'm thinking how I can map this onto this thing. Like should I ask another questions to critical and another to non-critical, so on. So just wanted to hear what you think about it.
So you're saying you divide stakeholders into critical stakeholders and non-critical stakeholders. The critical stakeholders,
like per section, yeah.
Okay, critical stakeholders can kill your project.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is what I would do in that case?
Like if we should somehow, like if we can somehow map that to your strategy of like defining values, or we should just don't consider that and just do this like method.
Actually, remember when I put the stakeholders on this quadrant,
Yeah.
Everybody who has a high power is because they are critical.
Those are critical.
Yeah, those are critical because they can kill the project.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't really make a big difference between the two. Also because the non-critical can have an influence on the critical stakeholders.
Okay.
So they're all critical.
That's interesting.
Okay. So but yeah, it's interesting to have probably different conversations.
Yeah.
What could make you want to spend more on this project? Okay.
Right.
Okay. So if you're speaking with a critical stakeholder, what in this project would make you want to spend more?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Contact information, slides, contact me on Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.